without further ado, I am going to pass things over to our very own Susan of RJ Julia to introduce our featured guest. So take it away, Susan.
Thank you, Dana. So I'm so happy to introduce Leslie Connor. She is a National Book Award finalist. She has many accolades and awards, including winning the Family Schneider Book Award, not once, but twice. We first came to know Leslie when her picture book, Miss Bridie Chose a Shovel, was published in 2004. She has also written 2 young adult novels, The Things You Kiss Goodbye and Dead on Town Line. But what Leslie is known and loved for the most are your middle grade novels, Leslie. So you give us such unique characters, and from each story, I feel like I get a map that helps me navigate through life a little bit better. And because of your characters, I'm really inspired to be a better human being. I want you to know your books do that. And tonight we're here to celebrate your latest middle grade novel, Anybody Here Seen Frenchie? And where we're going to meet, I really think, some of your most endearing, loveliest characters ever.
Oh, thanks so much. Well, I appreciate you reading it. I appreciate you agreeing to sit down and be in conversation with me tonight, because this is really like speaking with a friend, which is really nice for me. This is my hometown bookstore, everybody. I just want you to know that. And Susan's my hometown friend.
I love you so much, Leslie.
Thank you.
So
Mutual.
So let's start with your premise. Can you give us an overview of what this is about?
Sure. So Anybody Here Seen Frenchie is a book that kind of, I mean, always there are little things that seed a book, a story, the story idea never has just one little piece to it. There were a few things I feel fell into this book. And one of the things was that I was really thinking about middle grade friendships and how they begin to change. Oftentimes I think in many towns, when we enter middle grade, we are often also changing schools. And I remember that as a kid, and there's a real big shift in friendships and things like that. And in this case, the friendship is between, I really do feel that this book is about friendship. The friendship is between Aurora and Frenchie. They're both neurodiverse kids, which is kind of the thing that put them together. I think that they, sort of found each other, and the bond is really pretty tight. But I was thinking about how, especially with neurodiverse kids, they're usually given them a lot of strategies as they're moving through school, through the grades. And I thought, what happens when, since they're on different parts of, say, the autism spectrum, what happens when one kid is a little better able to begin to have some success with using those strategies, and one is it remains kind of the same, no more of an even kill. And so in this case, Aurora begins to kind of feel the tug of a social life, and Frenchie remains the same. And so I was thinking about what happens then. Can a friend get left behind? What kind of changes happen? There were a couple other seeds that fell into this. So I really do kind of think of it as packets of seeds. One other thing that fell into this book was something that I had seen in the woods in my own home, and that was a piebald deer. And I know we're going to talk about that more in a few minutes. But just kind of things falling together. My love of the state of Maine is definitely a big part of this book. That'll be in the setting. And then I also got really interested in thinking about how we lose people, or how do people get lost? And I say it that way because I think to myself, how many near misses were there? What could have happened just a little bit differently so that person didn't stay lost and and things didn't end up that way? Did somebody see that this kid had gone missing and not realize that they'd seen something important? Is there somebody who will not or cannot tell that they have a piece of the puzzle, because it does become this giant puzzle? So, I think it's clear from the title, Anybody Here Seen Frenchie, that somebody's going to go missing. So that's not a spoiler. So,
Yes.
Yeah. Does that answer that part?
Definitely. I want everyone to have an idea. I mean,
yeah,
we need to. So what did kind of come first, the plot or the characters for you? Is there? a process?
Yeah, things kind of begin to, once I start thinking about, I think situation comes first.
Okay.
So I was thinking about the situation of this missing kid who doesn't speak. That is the difference between Aurora and Frenchie. Aurora is a loud, vocal kid, actually, you know, kind of lacks that sort of self-regulating kind of sense of limiting her exuberance. And that is the thing that has made it hard for her to have friends in the passage. She's just a little too much, you know, whereas Frenchie is completely silent. And I think that, you know, I think a lot of people don't know how to approach someone who they know isn't going to talk, you know, converse with them, talk back to them. But in Aurora's case, that worked just fine because she wanted to do all the talking. And anyway, so I'm slightly off track. Tell me again what
Oh no,
put me
I was
back on
just
track.
your plot or characters.
the
You said
plot
a
characters.
situation comes up first.
So pretty soon, Aurora and Frenchie attach themselves to this idea of someone who's gone missing and doesn't speak, and we're worried about him. You know, so things kind of begin to come together, and it's when I get the character in my ear that I know it's actually a story. Otherwise, it just remains a situation that maybe I don't even know what to do with, you know. And so characters, and to me, the characters are the most important part of the story. And whether that's as a writer and as a reader, I can't. I've got to follow a person.
That shines through always.
Yeah.
And actually, by creating these two characters, I like that you're showing people somebody like Frenchie, and they can be more comfortable in the future when they encounter different people on different spectrums of autism. You know, you can understand a little better, be comfortable, make it more familiar. It's important.
Yeah, I was thinking about, it felt like there is a way to be a friend to someone who doesn't even necessarily respond or react to you much.
Or you don't think
right,
they are.
right, you don't think they are.
Because you can't see
Right.
what's in their head.
Right. So
Yeah.
I gave Aurora a challenge to, you know, really calm down, focus, and really observe Frenchie and learn to read his behavior, which I think is one of the most important things that any of us can do in life, is be able to read another person's behavior. And so she does that. And that's why there's kind of a double entendre here, but she feels that others don't take the time to read his behavior and understand him.
Definitely.
That there are meanings in the small movements he makes and in how he will react to something. So,
Right.
yeah. And because she knows his family, his mother too, she knows that he has this very strong sense of order and that he relies on things to happen a certain way. And so, you know, that also kind of bonds them in their friendship too. She's the one who's good with him.
I can relate to both of them.
Me too.
Funnily enough.
Yeah.
So my neighbor's son is actually autistic, and I have actually encountered many customers here in the bookstore. I love trying to get to know them and help them a little bit and find the right books. And Frenchie is very authentic to me. I've known my neighbor's son for 18 years, and so has my son. And I love the way you present them. Again, like I said, you make them relatable and approachable, and that's important. What research did you do on autism, or do you know someone with autism?
I do, and I did.
Okay.
Both, all of that. Yeah, I mean, I think for years this has been interesting to me. Who in the room is having a different experience than everyone else, you know. And in reading, I read so much about autism, and of course, I'm, you know, that could be a thesis, I think, you know, I would to say, and that's not within my scope. But, you know, there's this thing I say about writing about people with disabilities, that if you put the character before the disability, it means observing how they are and who they are without assigning, you know, a label to them and knowing. And that's really, I think, how to write about them. You know, so that's what I did. I mean, I did do a lot of research. Some of the most valuable bits of research for me came from blogs that were written by autistic people, came from YouTubes that were created by autistic people. And then when I had a draft done, I knew enough to seek out. I mean, I'm not autistic myself, so that probably was my biggest challenge with writing the book. I sought out two people who raised autistic sons and had them take a look at the book, and they supplied something very important. Actually, they both said that they thought that the story could use a little more in in terms of informing or acknowledging really that, you know, it's very complicated. There are challenges involved with loving and living with an autistic person, you know, a child.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure. Absolutely.
So, you know, I did do some, you know, I added some depth in terms of that. And, you know, that was such a really great gift they gave me, because I feel like every character, not just the two characters that are on the spectrum in the book, but every character in the book got a little extra layer of depth because of that comment.
Definitely.
It was great.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
It shines through.
Right.
It
In the author's note,
absolutely
I credit
does.
Eliza Factor and Tammy McGovern with that. So just I want to shout out.
That's good.
Yeah.
It shines through.
Thank you, Susan.
So this is like asking who is your favorite child, but do you have a favorite character in the story?
You know, I think this is one of the few books I've done that has multiple points of view.
Yes,
And
which I love.
Oh my gosh, that was so much fun. It's such a departure for me, and it really felt neat. And it's not just, you do hear from Aurora mostly, you hear from Frenchie, but you also hear from some of the townspeople who join in this search. And I have to tell you, it was interesting. They add a lot of tension, I think, to the story.
Yes.
And I have to tell you that those characters actually were the fastest chapters for me. I just loved being, you know, outside talking about what they'd seen or missed.
Yeah.
And since I had come to the story so interested in how we get lost or stay lost, those chapters came along really quickly. But I was thinking that if this is a good time for it, I could introduce you to Aurora the first day she meets Frenchie, and then to Frenchie the first day he meets Aurora. Now his chapters you'll see are a lot shorter. Hers are just a little bit longer, but I'm a short chapter writer, so all these chapters are short.
I would love.
Page 11. This is from Aurora, and this is called Mainstreaming Frenchie. The first time I met Frenchie Livernois, we were waiting for the bus at the end of the long drive we share. That was 3 years ago, 3rd grade. I ran, jumped, and hopped all the way there, rip ready for the first day of school. Another whole summer gone, and now the bus was coming to get me again. I loved going places, still do. In fact, we'd just come back from Maine after a vacation with Graham and Gramp in Connecticut. And that's why we weren't around to see our new neighbors move into the little house beside the A-frame. But Pop had said there was going to be a mom and a kid living there. A change like that is pretty big news where we live. I remember feeling my heart leap when I spotted them at the end of the drive. I ran and skidded to a stop right next to the woman and sprayed little stones over her clogs and against her bare ankles. Mom pulled me back. Careful, Aurora, she said. Oops, sorry, I said. Our new neighbor was nice. She laughed and her brown curls bounced. I waited for the boy to laugh too, but he stood a few yards away from us, back turned, almost like he hadn't heard us come up at all. Weird, I thought. I wanted to get to him, but his mom was talking to my mom, and I was working on being a good listener, sort of my life project. She explained that her name was Grazia and that her boy's name was Nathan French Livernois, but that she called him Frenchie from the day he was born. There we go, I thought, because if she had not explained, I was going to have to ask about that name. I'm Aurora Pauline Petra-Quinn, I said. I bopped from side to side and gave myself a knock on the head. That's Petra Quinn, just so you know. It's easy, but nobody gets it right. They say Pettigwin and Peterkin. Every year I have to tell my new teacher to sound it out. You would think they could do that, said Grazia, a total twinkle in her eye. Mom stood behind me, her hands cupped loosely on my shoulders. Anyway, you can call me plain Aurora, I said, and I roared my name to be friendly, and because Aurora is a name that likes to be roared, and I thought if I was loud enough, that boy Frenchie might turn around. Grazia leaned down and smiled. I am going to guess there's nothing plain about you. She had a voice like butter. You might be right, I said. Then I skittered away from the moms and went over to Frenchie. Who in this world doesn't turn around to say hello? I shuffled up beside him. I took a good look at his edges, his profile, the way his dark hair was trimmed around his ear. His skin was light like seashells and sprinkled with summer freckles. Hey, I'm Aurora, I roared, but not too loudly. Good to meet you, I said. Frenchie stared straight ahead. Hello, I tried again. He didn't answer. I knew plenty of kids in town who were not too interested in me, but sheesh, this was a brand new one. Wasn't he even going to give me a try? I leaned in. We're neighbors, you know. The boy did not move. I walked all the way around him, took a good look at those tan pants of his. He had them pulled way up, belted so tight his plaid button-down shirt puffed out almost like a costume. That's all he's ever worn for as long as I've known him. Frenchie Livernois, plaid mushroom. I stood beside him, tried to stare at whatever he was staring at. Was it our mailboxes on that post across the road? Something in the field? Maybe he'd seen something crawling around in the ditch. You know, I said, there's a wood rat that travels along there. You like animals? Frenchie's elbows straightened by his sides. His hands twitched, then stopped. He didn't quit staring except to blink his long, dark eyelashes like slow motion. Wood rat, I said it again just to see if he'd move. Nope. I spun on one foot, grinding the gravel. I leaped and landed in a lunge, arms wide, right into the middle of Mom and Grazia's conversation. Hey, what's with him? I blurted. I pointed my finger behind me. Mom said, Aurora, try not to interrupt, I said. Yeah, sorry about that, but what the heck? I jabbed my finger back toward the boy again. Grazia smiled. She used her butter voice again. Oh, Aurora, I was telling your mom, Frenchie doesn't talk. Not in words, but he does hear you. I pulled my chin back. Oh, hears me, huh? I wasn't so sure. Not that I thought she was lying, but I wondered if she was one of those moms who would say the things she wanted to think was true, even when it wasn't. Like Darlene Dombrowski's mom, who kept saying all through second grade that Darlene was a kind and patient soul. I had news for her, even way back then. Darlene is a difficult acquaintance of mine. I'm not alone there. Other kids don't play with her. And since they don't play with me either, the school has been trying to pair us up for years. Exhausting is what that is. Unsuccessful too. But I was heading into third grade that very morning, fresh start coming up. I had my strategies. For one, I was aiming to do less blurting. I aim for that every year. It's tricky for me. Pop says I should be me and that people learn by living and doing. Trouble is, I end up having to undo a lot of the stuff I mess up. Anyway, I went up to Frenchie that first morning and stood close to his ear. Should be here so soon, I told him. I put those S's right into his ear. The bus, that is. He twitched and pulled his shoulder up, kept staring. I stepped back. His mom was right. He could hear. He was also ear ticklish. I bet you don't get in trouble, do ya? I said, watching those eyelashes again. I took 2 giant Mother May I steps toward the road and looked. Still no bus, which meant I had time to scratch open a few of my Connecticut vacation mosquito bites, or maybe they were from that pit stop we made in Massachusetts. I started counting off the states we'd driven through on our way home the day before. So I was thinking about states when I heard Frenchie's mom tell my mom. So I decided to bring him here where I could mainstream him. I quit digging my skin. I popped straight up. I looked at that woman hard. Was she saying she'd moved here to Maine and was going to put Frenchie in a stream? Well, hey, I called, can he swim? Mom and Grazia both laughed. Mom said mainstream means Frenchie's going to attend public school and go to class like you, Aurora. Grazia Livernois said, but you ask a good question. Frenchie doesn't swim. Oh, well, knowing how to swim is a smart idea for anyone living around here, I said. We've got a place where we can teach him. Grazia knotted her hands together. She brought them up under her chin. I want him to learn, she said. Then she added so many things. She seemed hunched up and nervous, like she was worried about all the streams in Maine and the ponds and the oceans too. But I get it now. It was more than that. She had a no-talk boy heading off for a start at a new school in a new town. So then this next chapter is really short, and this is Frenchie. And it says, she was Aurora. Frenchie Livernois stared at the field beyond the mailboxes. Birds were there, low in the grass. The girl came up from behind, running, spinning, jumping. She landed beside him. She spoke at him. Wood rat. Quiet is good for seeing birds, so Frenchie kept quiet while the girl hissed right into the hole of his ear. The girl told him, soon, and buzz. The girl's voice was one, single, clear. It gave Frenchie the feeling of birds without seeing birds, lightness in his fingers. It moved inside him on the path up his arms, down his ribs. It made his shoulder inch up, a tug from somewhere inside of him. Pretty soon, he knew that she was Aurora. She looked where he looked at the field, where the birds flew up. Aurora called, woo, woo. Did you know those were there all this time, Frenchie? She flapped her arms. Arms are like wings. They are not wings. Hands are like wings. They are not wings. Frenchie watched the birds put dark flicker shapes on the pale sky. They drew loops, then grew small as dots. When the birds were gone, Frenchie flapped his hands. He meant to make bird song. He thought he had, but there was a rumble down road from where he stood. It juddered the bottoms of his feet. He felt it at his middle. Aurora called, her one clear voice. Frenchie, it's coming, bus. She was Aurora, and Frenchie was going with her. Well, it kind of tells you about the two main characters.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And I loved reading it, but hearing you read aloud, that was even better.
It's always fun to hear how an author hears a thing in her ear.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So tell us more about the Pieball Deer. I mean, this is something you actually saw.
It is. So the Pieball Deer was just this special creature who showed up in the woods near my home. We live on a property that borders a land trust. And it was just this beautiful animal that looked like it was wearing a patchwork quilt instead of, a regular white-tailed deer's coat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just gorgeous. I mean, if you look them up, you can find out about them. Of course, I immediately began to look up, what was that I saw? It actually had crossed the road in front of my car the first time I saw it when it was very young, and I thought that it was someone's goat. I was that confused.
Sure. Yeah.
Piebald's actually, all that interesting look on the outside actually is a little sad because it means that there are troubles on the inside. It's a mutation. So it it can be various. So it had shorter legs than normal, which is probably why it looked like a goat to me. And the colors were more sort of a brown and a white of a goat. And ours happened to have these two beautiful, perfect sort of Harlequin style triangles on his eyes. And he was in the area for about 22 months and did get to see him a number of times. He seemed to me to be not quite as shy as some other deer. And from the videos and things I've seen online, that does seem to be true.
That's interesting because you had that in the book, so I wondered about that.
Yeah, Frenchie and Aurora encountered this deer, and Aurora really becomes very enchanted with it and wants to follow it every chance she gets, and does become a very important part of the plot. I don't want to spoil that, but
yes,
but yeah, so I just sort of assigned my enchantment with this wild animal that you take it very, the narcissist in me takes it very personally. Go, that animal is letting me see it. It's like that dream of being chosen. I think of Sarah Pennypacker's story about Pax, the fox that chose to be with this boy. Then a wild animal choosing you, I think, is this really special thing. And so I assigned those enchanted feelings to Aurora, and she takes those into the story with you.
I love that. I
Thank
absolutely
you.
love that.
Thanks.
Should I ask you, do you have a favorite scene? Was there a difficult scene to write? I know you just read, so any thoughts on either of those?
Yeah, some scenes just give you trouble from sort of the writer's standpoint, and other scenes I think give you trouble from an emotional standpoint.
Yeah. You said you liked writing about the townspeople.
Those sort of fell forward so quickly. I sort of knew what their story was going to be, what they'd seen. I sort of knew who they all were. I think that Frenchie's scenes were actually interesting to write because he sees the world a little differently than the rest of us do. So they were very interesting to write. And then, toward the end, I don't want to spoil things, but, I do kind of want readers to know there's been this, controversy over, this is a book about a missing kid. Is this going to be all right to read? And what I promise readers is that I will make you worry. I might make you cry, but I will not devastate you. This book does not have a bleak ending. So I will say that the last chapters of the book were emotional for me to write. Yeah.
But it is age appropriate.
Yeah.
It really, really is.
I think the other hardest scene to write, come to think of it, was Frenchie is missing over a night.
Yeah.
And after that first day of searching, Aurora and her family have to go home to bed at night. And that was just heck.
Yes.
It felt horrible to have to put this 11-year-old through this.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Even reading it until you know what happens next. So
that's why there's also some levity in the book, because I feel like, for all I knew I was going to be putting her through, I had to, there had to be funny moments, and she herself is quite funny.
Yeah.
Oh,
she is.
She made me laugh a lot. What a kid.
What a kid. Over the years, is there some important thing that you've learned through your writing, or is that too?
I guess I was asked recently for a book panel, have I been changed by my writing? And I popped off with the answer, no. I'm still this 11-year-old at heart. I think that's why middle grade ends up being my wheelhouse. I think that's where I arrested or whatever. I still feel like that's my job, is to be 11, and so. In that way, my books haven't changed me, but I just think in terms of sort of being able to start something that is going to be quite a journey and finish it, even on the worst days for the writing, when I think I'm not going to make it. I remember that there have been previous books that I had this moment, and I pounded through them, and did finish it, getting by with help from my friends. I have a critique group that is really helpful.
That's so important.
Without that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You got to have feedback.
And then in the end, your books are showing empathy and compassion, and when it's to the exact right group of people that you want to get that out to.
I love middle grade.
I love middle grade. And even as an adult, I'm always, like I said, I'm always learning something more. I'm like, yeah, that's right. And where was that book when I was a kid?
Yeah. And middle grade books have gotten just fabulous,
yes.
I think, and I hear from, I've been hearing from, people of all ages. I know last year when I wrote The Truth is Told by Mason Buttle, I heard from 4 septuagenarians that year who had picked up the book and said, I just started reading it, and it reminded me of my boyhood, or it reminded me of being a kid, and I didn't even think about who its audience really was. I enjoyed it anyway.
Yes.
So there's a lot of other 11-year-olds out there who happen to also be in their 70s.
Yes. Or late 50s.
Yeah, that.
But for the kids you're writing for, but I hope all their parents are reading these. Truly, I do, with all my heart. And all your books, I always think that should be in every classroom library. That should be in every school library. And people who seem reluctant, I pick it up and read it. You've got to read it to know it, because, like I said, empathy and compassion, that's the most important thing.
And I think that comment speaks to the importance of the read aloud just as a thing, out there. And I really admire teachers who are making the time for that in their classrooms.
Yes.
I know it's not always easy.
Yes. I can remember as my son grew, certain teachers that did that very thing, and him coming home and talking about it. Mrs. So-and-so today read, and and us continuing it sometimes at home.
Yes. I have these adorable stories of, getting letters from teachers who said, my kids chose to give up recess. I'm like, oh, don't let them do that. They got to get outside. They're still because I'm such a recess fan. I think kids should be outdoors all the time.
Yes.
but I thought that was really sweet. As they said, no, read the chapter.
That's awesome.
It's really sweet. I said, don't let them do it though. Make them go out.
Yes. So I know we're going to move on to questions very shortly, but can I assume you started another novel?
I have.
Can you give us a little hint? Or?
Sure, I can tell you a little bit about it. So I'm writing a story that I think of as a sister story, very much a family story. And I can't tell you a whole lot about it yet. It's newish in my mind. I'm slowly working my way through. So.
But is it middle grade?
It's middle grade.
Thank goodness.
But it's a middle grader who has been watching older siblings a lot. So it's funny. It's a middle grade book with a kind of a big teenage element in it. Yeah.
But there'll be a lot of
Being the
readers who can-
youngest,
yes,
being a
who can
distant
relate
youngest.
to that.
I think so. And I don't know of a lot of books that cover it,
Yeah.
you know, and this family is actually facing a very big adjustment. And it's kind of about who rises to that adjustment and who doesn't.
Oh, wow. I
Yeah.
can't wait.
I can't wait either. I
Can't
really would need to get more of an underway.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
All right. So I believe we have a few questions for you. Please. Let's see. How do you approach the puzzle portion of your plots? I think you do layers and twists so well. This is from Nancy.
Oh, well, with difficulty. You know, I think part of it, one thing I should say about my process is that I'm really kind of a mess. I don't even recommend what I do. But
it works for you.
it does.
Yeah.
It does. I'm kind of a scenes person. I often say I don't really write books, I write scenes. And then I have to make order and sense of them. And the first draft of this book of Frenchie was a mess because I had all these, you know, I had these points of view and everything. And it took quite a bit to put them in order. And I kind of thought they were going to work in terms of vignettes, but my wise editor is Catherine Teagan at HarperCollins
Great.
said, you know, you're going to need to put transitions in here and this is going to help a lot. And she was absolutely right. so we started to do that. But I think, you know, I think that just keeping those little, you know, planting things and keeping those layers in mind as you go along. And I tend to comb back through what I've written. I don't usually push through a draft. I'm more of a, you know, go pick up what you were working on the day before and give it a read and then think about that while you're out on your walk.
That
and,
makes
you know,
sense to me.
picture what do I need to do? You know, what comes next, what comes next, what comes next, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's how the layers eventually work out for me, but you know.
And every author has every writer has a different process.
Yeah, and some people
It's figuring
outline very
out.
tightly,
Yes.
you know, and that's not me. That's not me. And
Yeah.
one is not better than the other at all. you
No,
know,
some are
sometimes-
pantsers, some are plotters.
Right.
A lot are sort of in between.
Yeah. Sometimes
Yeah.
I wish I were a more organized person, but I'm just not.
Yeah.
So I do it. You know, better to get something down, right?
Yeah.
Better to get something written
Then
than
you
to
have something
spin
to
all
go
day
back.
and worry. You have something to build from in two directions.
Yes.
A lot of the times, if you write
Yeah.
out of order, like I do.
Yes.
So
Absolutely. Alrighty, so this next question's from Nikki. Love the various points of view. You incorporated it as it wove in the value of community beautifully. How long did it take you to write the first draft?
thank you, Nikki, by the way. That's really very, very sweet. And I was going for a strong sense of community. So I'm really, really happy to hear that. I think that generally speaking, a first draft takes me about 1 year. Yeah, I'm not the fastest writer, but I, you know, that's another thing. You just got to do what works for you.
Yes.
And so I take about a year to do that. And then it will come back to me for revision, for revision with notes and things like that. Usually not a lot, but sometimes more than other times. And so then, you know, so then it's a little hard to say that it takes only a year to write the book,
Right.
because then we are kind of working on it. And other aspects of the book are being worked on, of course, by the publisher. Then, you know, I always say once you sell a manuscript, it's no longer your book, it's our book. So we
Right.
work in, and I like that, our, very much.
Yeah, it must be good to have some
It-
type of
it
structure and
is.
guidance from somebody.
Yes,
Right.
it is. Thanks, Nikki, for the question.
Okay, do we have some more? No. I love that you included a map in the book, and I began to follow the different sightings. Did you make the map for yourself as you wrote?
I sure as heck did. Yes. And I wish I had it with me. I probably post it on Instagram soon, but I had this messed up map that I had, you know, I scrubbed it with an eraser. I
Oh.
marked things. I made, you know, when I began to research how we search for someone who is missing, I learned a lot of method. And so I put that method all over this map. So the map I was using was really kind of a mess, but I shared it with the illustrator. And you know, with kind of this hope that, oh, maybe we could have end papers, or, you know, dream on, girl, you know. and then lo and behold, she made this beautiful map, which I just love. And I think it's a really great thing for young readers to be able to follow, because it shows you kind of where Frenchie went, where somebody saw him, and where he wound up, you know, and why. I mean, there's a lot of hiking in this book.
Yes.
You know, I almost got worried about how much hiking there was, but you know, that's what this search involved through you know, this coastal town in Maine. The woodland parts of it mainly wasn't so much seaside, but
yes,
yeah.
I like the map too, because it helps you really connect more with the story by looking and going, oh wait, okay, so they think he's over here now, and you can shift around and just understanding the story.
Yes.
And having it.
Right. It also showed all these sort of you know, underdeveloped trails and things that that were maybe used by animals or yes. by you know, recreational trails that weren't exactly main roads or anything. So you know, that was also one of the ways in which he was missed.
Right.
Yeah.
I like those deer trails. I come across them. So, all right. Amy asks, how much did your own experience as a middle grader influence or inspire the story?
Plenty. You know, I was, for one thing, I was probably that 11-year-old who, for some reason, felt too shy and not confident enough to reach out to the kid who didn't speak in a class, you know. And so, you know, I'm kind of, I don't know, in a way I'm sort of paying that debt all these years later. I think that, you know, we have to be patient with ourselves. It isn't going to be everyone who it takes a certain bravery to reach out to someone that you know isn't going to speak back to you. If you're going to have to hold up the whole end of the conversation, right. You know, and it would take a lot of exposure and a lot of time to get to know someone. So I think that, you know, in some ways we need to, you know, forgive ourselves for our shyness about that. But also, you know, find a little bravery about something. A kid like Frenchie, who loves birds, if you just had a little paper cutout of a bird and you slipped it onto his desk, that would have meaning to someone like him. And so, you know, yeah, I mean, who I was definitely, you know, informed that. I'm sure, you know, I was also kind of the nervous, scared kid in the corner all the time. I was kind of a nervous kid. So, so sure, it informed a lot of that. You know, there's that, what's the quote that Ursula Nordstrom said, I think it was Ursula. I hope I'm not misassigning that quote, where she said, you know, I was once a child and I've forgotten very little. You know? Yeah. Or maybe it may have been one of her authors who said it. Maybe right. Margaret Wise Brown. I'm not sure. Okay. We'll have to find that one out.
Oh, it might have been. Actually.
Y'all can go on your own hunt for who it was that actually said that, because Leslie Connor got it wrong.
All righty. So this is Joanne. Does the lyrical quality of Frenchie's voice result from his nonverbal behavior? Did you understand that when I read that?
Yeah, I do. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that yes. I think I kind of thought of him as having a kind of a, you know, lyrical sense of observation, and just trying to sort of take in and answer questions. It's one of the things that, you know, my research kind of steered me toward. We can't ever really know, I think, with when kids are and it's very important. He actually isn't nonverbal. He's non-vocal, which is a really strong distinction. Mm-hmm. He does understand things that are said, so therefore he is verbal. Just doesn't speak. Right. So being non-vocal is actually different. But I began to think, well, you know, we have syntax and everything, and I felt like not being someone who doesn't speak, his thinking syntax must be different, you know, would be different somehow. So I think that does probably contribute to that, and these sort of, you know, short sentences, and, you know, okay, I'm going to process this now and this now and this now. You know, yeah, I learned that one of the most touching things I learned about autism is that, I know, anyone who is autistic is probably the person in the room who's working the hardest at just maintaining composure, at being in a social situation. And boy, that really reached in and took a piece of my heart with it. Yeah. You know, that's one of the things that really attached to me, you know.
Yeah.
So,
That makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
too when you
I
say
mean,
that.
lights and noise and activity,
Yes.
you know, they're
So
very,
much.
very
Yep.
sensitive to that kind of
Yes.
thing. And within this huge range. That's the other
Mhm.
thing, is there's such a vast, the spectrum is so vast.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All righty. Ellie, do you have a favorite book that you've written?
I don't. Books really are like your kids. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like there's a favorite something about them, and but I do have sort of a stock answer for this question, and that is that my favorite book really needs to be the one I am writing now,
There you
because
go.
I have to be completely immersed in it. I really do. There are books that have done nice things for me, you know. I mean, because of Mason Buttle, I got to travel a lot that I would normally wouldn't have gotten to go places. You know, that had won a really nice award, and so there was, you know, a gala and a really great meal.
That's good.
Things like that, and a medal, which, you know, I love to hang on my dogs, and, you know,
Oh, good.
yeah, really, really cool, because I treasure it, and I treasure my dogs too.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's a lovely question.
Do you
So,
have something?
Yeah, I do. I know we're coming to the close, and I just wanted to, you know, I have author friends everywhere, and there are two books that were published just very recently. In fact, this book, Dear Student, is by Ellie Swartz, and that book shares a book birthday with me, which was really fun. And only a little bit before came Nancy Tandon's book, The Way I Say It, and I bought these books from the bookstore, and we're having some fun with those of you who have ordered a copy of Anybody Here Seen Frenchie. We're going to at random slip these, you know, someone's going to win a copy along with, without having known that you entered. I'm giving, this is a little giveaway, and I chose these books also not because they're both just new, but because you know, these authors, for one thing, they are great middle grade authors, and the other thing is I felt like both these books are about communication, you know,
Yes.
as I feel Anybody Here Seen Frenchie is, in totally different ways. Dear Student, this is a young writer really finding her voice, and The Way I Say It by Nancy Tandon is about a kid with a speech impediment.
Yes.
And so, you know, both overcoming something, and so you know, to honor both Ellie and Nancy, and to honor kids who are finding their voice, we're having a little giveaway. Don't know who's going to get them. It's going to happen at random. So you could pick up your copy of Frenchie and find out that you've got another book.
Yay.
Cheers.
Yay. That's wonderful. All righty. I think one last thing I was just going to ask you is, do you enjoy the drafting more, or do you enjoy the revising more? As just the writerly question.
Yeah, drafting is really an awful lot of fun. You know, I really love just putting down those scenes, listing those ideas, you know, make a scene list and get one and write it, you know. I enjoy that a lot. And yet, you know, there's quite a lot of fun in revision too, because by then I have, you know, things are pretty solid, and we're generally not making great big giant changes, which is really great. I mean, some huge changes, you know, to structure really scare me. Yeah. But I think, yeah, I mean, it's a joy to tweak something that is already almost finished, you know, and that's just a really good feeling. And I start thinking really about the reader, and okay, this is how they're going to hear it, and you know, so but now we're really checking the words we used and all of that. So there's joy in both parts, and boy, you're ready for the one by the time you finish the other. So there you go. You know, nice. I'm ready for new drafting after working on Frenchie, you know, after the last part of that effort. Yeah, definitely. That's such a good question.
Good. Did you think of the title? I know that's a funny thing about.
Yeah, Anybody Here Seen Frenchie really did, you know, come to me and stick. What was hilarious, and is still kind of hilarious, is that we all have, you know, we've all kind of messed it up a few times. Like, has anybody here seen Frenchie? You know?
Right. Yes.
Anybody here looking for Frenchie? Yeah. So, anybody here seen Frenchie? And I'm sure, you know, that you know, it kind of the Where's Frenchie, like, you know, the old Where's Waldo books or something like that. But I think we finally got it. Anybody here seen Frenchie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
That's lovely. All right. Well, thank you so much, Leslie, for being here tonight. And
thanks for joining, everybody.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. You know, just a big heartwarming heartfelt thank you to
Yeah.
everyone, because this was a lovely evening.
Well, it was warm and wonderful. Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.